Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, not too long ago, I did a video where I talked about Microsoft buying studios, then Sony's kind of starting to do the same. Nothing really from Nintendo, but if there's one company that really ought to be sold, or at least their IPs, it's Konami, because they're sure as hell not really doing anything with them. Which, well, technically they are. I'll get to more on that in a second, but yeah, Konami, who was once one of the greatest third-party game developers companies out there, is a shell of what they once were. They have been for the past several years, and they focus more on like pachinko machines and like free-to-play mobile game stuff, and they have all these great IPs that they really don't do anything with, other than the occasional like nostalgia cash grab type of thing. Which a few examples are Super Bomberman R, which it's not great, but it's not bad. Like it reminds me a lot of like the Bomberman games for the Super Nintendo. So I guess if you like those games. Another one is Contra Rogue Core, which again an okay game, but it just doesn't have that Contra vibe. Like it's I don't know. It's just and then there was Metal Gear Survive, which oh god. I'll be honest with you, I never really got into Metal Gear. Like, I think I played a little bit of Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 back in the day, but that was about it. Other than that, I've not really got into the games. Like, not saying they're bad or anything, they're just not really my thing. But, I also understand how iconic that franchise is and how popular those games are. So, and I never played Metal Gear Survive either, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what that game was. It was literally just like this random thrown together horror game with the Metal Gear name slapped onto it. It's just so it's really like I feel like Metal Gear. I mean, Konami should just. They don't need necessarily the whole company to be bought, but they need to just sell their IPs. Like, and I think there's a couple of possibilities. Like, they could sell them to, like, another third-party company, or they could sell them to Sony, or they could sell them to Nintendo, or they could do a little of both, like maybe half to Sony and half to Nintendo. I know that would create, a lot of their IPs would become exclusive, but, I mean, well, if that's the way it's has to be, I know some people don't like exclusives, even though they've been around for decades. And if that were the case, like, I think that would probably... Personally, I think that would be the best case scenario if they sold, like, half them to Sony and half to Nintendo. Microsoft, I don't really see that happening, mainly because, Microsoft being an American company and Konami being Japan. Yeah, I don't see that happening. But anyway, so I think Sony and Nintendo would be the best. And I'll give you, like, some examples. Like, I'm not going to go back and forth, like, Konami with all these Sony ones, all these Nintendo ones. I'm just going to kind of go, like I said, back and forth. And I'm going to do, like, the more well-known ones, and I'll talk about some lesser-known ones that could maybe be brought back. So, first, Metal Gear. I think that would be best with Sony. Like, I don't know, maybe just because they're more, adulterish or something. I don't know. I just feel like the, Metal Gear with Sony, like in PlayStation consoles, would be the best fit. Bomberman, I definitely think would be best with Nintendo. As for the others, well, Contra is kind of a hard one. Like, well, it's not a hard one, but I feel like that could go either way. Although I think I'd lean a little bit more towards Sony on that one. Castlevania, I think would probably be best with Nintendo because, well, I know some people might think like, oh, but their two games are all babyish. They would make it like they would ruin the franchise, but it's true that Nintendo is known for their kiddie-like IPs like Mario, Kirby, Animal Crossing, Pokemon. But, then they also have IPs like Metroid and Fire Emblem. Hell, we'll even throw Star Fox and F-Zero in there. Those IPs aren't exactly sunshine and rainbows. And imagine that, like, if this did happen, like, the team who does the Metroid games could do the Castlevania games. Let me back up a bit. Another thing about before I get into the lesser-known titles, is another thing that Konami tends to do is like throw out these little collection games. Like there's the Contra. The only reason I passed on, I do love collection games. Like like Sega's made a bunch of them. There was like an SNK one and stuff like recently, and Midway made a bunch back in the day. But anyway, the only reason I passed on the Konami ones was because rather than I don't how it's like they do kind of like a, how can I put this? Rather than doing like a mix and match type of thing, they kind of put them all like, well, I don't know, I'm all over the place, but it's like, there's a Contra collection and a Castlevania collection, so it's like, personally, I would rather have seen like, if they took like a couple of Castlevania games, a couple of Contra games, damn you Konami with all your sounding franchises, a couple of just did it again, a couple of Contra games, a couple of Castlevania games, and then a bunch of their other games and put that all into one collection. That's what I would have loved to see them do, but that's just me. I will say this, though. I am really looking forward to that new TMNT collection coming out. I'm shocked that is actually happening for a number of reasons, mainly because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is such a licensing nightmare. But let's get back to some of their lesser-known IPs that maybe could be resurrected under Sony and Nintendo's leadership. First, we have the Rocket Knight Adventure games, which there was two of these to my knowledge. There was Rocket Knight Adventures on the Genesis and Sparkster on the Super Nintendo. Very good little platformers. If you like action platformer type of games, especially like from that 16-bit era, I highly recommend these games. They're so much fun. Great music too. And that one, I think, would probably be best with Nintendo. So next, the Suikoden games, a series of JRPGs, which are very unique. They were always on the PlayStation consoles. There was 5 of them, although I've only played, but what makes these a unique JRPG is, one thing is the battle system is a bit more unique, but I'm not going to go into complete detail on that. But also, basically, with each game, you're building an army, so it's like you recruit over 100 people. Now, of course, not all of them fight. You have somebody who might run a tavern, another person will run an item shop. Some of them might play like mini games with you. Some of them just like to talk and things like that. Where was I going with that? And not all of them are easy to find. Well, let me put it another way. Some of them join naturally as part of the games. The story, excuse me. So they join naturally as part of the story. Others, you have to recruit them like under special circumstances, maybe if once the hero is at a higher level, or once your army has more people, or maybe they need you to find a special item, or you need to bring a certain character that they're familiar with, or things like that. And what's also interesting is that, there's always recurring characters, and the stories kind of intertwine with each other, so to speak. What I mean by that is the first game, I'm not going to go into details on the story with each of them, but, each one has, a war going on, hence the reason you put an army together. So, in the first one, it's in this country where you have, an army which is run by what's known as the Scarlet Moon Empire, and in that game you hear that to the north is a country or another land, whatever, known as the city-state of Joustin, and that's where the second game takes place. And in the second game, in the city-state of Joustin, you hear about another country or land to the northwest called the Grasslands, and that's where the third one takes place. And after that, I kind of lost touch, but yeah. For these games, again, kind of like Contra, these could go either way, but I think I'd lean a little bit more towards Sony on this one. I don't really know why, I just feel like they'd kind of be better fit with Sony. And the last one is Vandal Heist. Now, I'm not going to go into details because I talk about these games all the time on my channel. But there were a series of JRPGs. There was 2 on the PlayStation and 1 on Xbox Live and PSN during the 7th gen, 360 and PS3. there are strategy games or tactical RPG, whichever you like to call them. Each one is different, which is kind of interesting, but I still think the first one is the best, and I would love to see more Vandal Hearts games, especially like the first one down the road. And this one, I think could go either way again, because one thing, these games are very graphic, especially the first one. It's like full of like blood and alcohol and like swears and stuff, so that might be like a better fit with Sony. But on the other hand, like if it was with Nintendo, they could get the Fire Emblem game people. Trying to blank on the name of the company, but it's kind of like how HAL makes Kirby for Nintendo systems, and then Game Freak makes Pokemon games for their systems. It's kind of the same thing with Fire Emblem. So it's like, maybe that company, Nintendo could buy Vandal Hearts, but then the company, like I said, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the company that makes the Fire Emblem games could make the Vandal Hearts games. Maybe they could even get the company, maybe they could even get the people who do like Sega or Platinum Games, who does the Bayonetta games. Maybe they could get them to work on them or something, but I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but those are just some of my ideas. So let me know in the comments section. Do you think Konami should sell their IPs? And, like, who should they sell them to? Or should they, like, divide them up or something? And, like, maybe there's some other IPs you'd like to see come back. Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.